Hello there, everybody. And depending on when you're looking at this, Happy New Year or almost Happy New Year or whatever. Again, depending on what you're looking at. I hope everybody had a good holiday and it was relatively peaceful. I know many of you could have had a better holiday than you did have, and I understand that, but that's in a sense where the new year comes in, isn't it? As we start thinking in terms of how we're going to make the next year better. I've yet to meet anybody who wants to make it worse. So I'm going to have to make the rash assumption, even though assuming is not always a good idea, that you want to make it better, right? So with that in mind, I want to talk a little bit today about a simple way to start doing this. Because I know that a lot of people will start thinking in terms of really big plans and really big resolutions, but we might start thinking about something even more small and even more subtle. With that in mind, I've got a quote from Stephen Covey. And he wrote a couple of books, the life of which I just completely forgot right at this particular moment, but that's beside the point. And I discovered that there's a word for that, lithography, I think, something like that. I'll find that out and put it in an email maybe if you're curious enough. But anyway, but Covey's quote goes, "The key is not to prioritize what's on your schedule, to schedule your priorities." And so if we're thinking in terms that if you want to get something done, scheduling your priorities works better than just kind of like putting things on your calendar. Now, some of you have probably heard, many of you have probably heard the story of, or some variation of the story of the jar with the stones and the sand and everything else in there. The original idea that I heard way back when in ancient history was that a professor was in a classroom and he put in a bunch of big rocks into this big jar and then asked the students, is it full? And the students said yes. And so then he put in more smaller stones. And he says, is this full? I said, yeah, it's full. And then he put in sand, and they said, yeah, it's full. And then he put water in on top of that and said, yes, then it was full. The point he was trying to make is that even though you put the big things in the jar, in other words, in this case, the major things that you have to do with your life, work or doing something with children or whatever it is, those major things of your particular life, they get in the jar first. And then you've got time left over to put in the smaller stones, which may be hobbies or other little things that you need to do that may not be as relatively important to say keeping your job, but are still important and need to be done. And then you get smaller and smaller and smaller, and you start thinking in terms of those little items that you want to do during the year or during the day or during the week, as the case may be. And you end up filling in the time you've got depending on what's left over after you put in the big stones. Now, the big stones are the things that you really want to do, the big things in your life. And the idea of this particular little story, putting the stones in there, is that you think in terms of doing the big things, the important things first. And there goes Penny barking at something. I don't know what, but we'll find out. Anyway, so that if you're thinking in terms of looking at all the things that you have to do, what are those things that need to be done? What are those things that have to get done or you want to get done? Whatever the important things to you. Because if you take a look at a bunch of people and ask what their big stones are, they're going to have differences about those things that have to be done. There are going to be some people that think housekeeping is more important than other things, and other things are going to be more important than housekeeping. There are a variety of different things depending on who you are. But you get in and put in those big things first. Okay? What you're thinking about here is deciding what really matters in your life. What are those things that have to get done that you want to get done? What happens most often than not, at least from what I've been able to tell about people when they come or mention, time management to me or lack thereof, is they go do the smaller things first. And the big things that they want done, they don't end up having time to do, or they're having to figure out where to put it. So the idea of this particular quote and this particular analogy with the stones in the jar is that when you're going through your new year and you're thinking in terms of the things you want for 2026, think in terms of what are those things that you really want done? What are those big important things that you're looking for, that you're trying to get accomplished? What are those things that give your life meaning? Block your time for those things first, okay? Don't sit in there and think in terms of, well, I've got this and that and the other. What are the things that you want done because they give your life meaning and those are the things that you want to do? So if you want time to read, schedule reading time. If you want time to go out and practice a sport, schedule that. Put in those things that are the most important to you that will get your goals and take you to where you want to be. If you don't schedule those things and keep that schedule, because what tends to happen is that people will put those items on the calendar and then something else will come up and those are going to be the things that go first. And then they can't figure out why they're unhappy or why things aren't getting done or whatever the case may be. So schedule those things that you want. Make your priorities, make your goals lead essentially where you're going to go. Because if you have a specific goal, you want a new job, you want a relationship, you want whatever it is that you want, if you don't start working on them and doing things to accomplish those goals, you're going to be thinking about those at the same time next year because you put those to the back seat and you haven't gotten anything done with them. So instead of, I started to say instead of the New Year's resolution, it kind of depends on what your resolution is. If your resolution is to say lose weight, which is a frequent thing, or whatever, get into a relationship or get out of one or whatever, put that down on your calendar, at least mental, as to what you're going to do and how you're going to work on it. What are you going to do to make that happen? If just using it as an example, you want to lose weight, schedule that and tell you what are you going to do? Are you going to get more exercise? Are you going to eat less? Are you going to change your diet? Put those things on your schedule and make those a priority first. Otherwise, you're going to end up at the end of January, beginning of February, thinking, oh, well, there's another resolution that's just, gone by. And, oh, well, too bad, because you didn't put it first. Okay? If you want to step into the year with clarity of where you want to go and where you want to end up a year from now, put your priorities first. Your peace will tend to follow that because you will be more satisfied that you're accomplishing those things that you want to do. Because in many cases, if you don't get those things done, you're going to be uncomfortable and unhappy because you feel like you're, in a sense, ignoring yourself, which basically you are, aren't you? So just go into the year, and I'll make this short, believe it or not, honestly, sort of short. I'm going to challenge you this week to think in terms of how can you start putting your plans, your priority into your schedule as the big rocks that are going to go into that jar. You'll find small rocks, you'll find pebbles, you'll find sand, you'll find water, and a lot of other things are going to fill up that jar. But what are those big rocks, and can you schedule them and plan for them for the next year? If you can start looking for those big rocks now, you'll be in a very different place than at this time next year than you are right now. If you think about what happened in the last year, I would be willing to bet if you're not really satisfied with where you are today, it's probably because you didn't plan for those big rocks. Think about it. What's the big rock that you're looking for to accomplish this next year? And how are you going to put that in your schedule so that you're going to get that done? Does that make sense? If you have any questions or just want to give me a comment just to put down for the so that you put it in public, the accountability aspect of it. I'm not going to be able to go around and say, gee, are you doing it? But sometimes just being able to hit the email and say, this is what I want to get done next year might actually help you get more done because you've committed to it by sending me an email, even though I'm not going to be able to go up and put on a bulletin board and say, this is what you said. See what happens. Think about it. Okay. So I wish you a happy new year. I hope everything goes well and you've got good weather wherever you happen to be. And we will chat with you later. Happy New Year.